Bailouts are a major issue in a part of the economic crisis that we have today for the main reason that bailouts lead to increased dependency on the bank's part. So essentially what happens is that banks are getting bailed out by the government and are in huge amounts of debt, and the government keeps bailing them out, and the banks become dependent on the government's money for that reason.
Even though bailouts lead to the bank's dependency on the government, if we didn't have bailouts, then everyone would go to the banks to take out their money because the banks would have crashed and the banks wouldn't have any money to give back to the people. So if the government didn't bail out the banks, then America would be in a depression.
But you think it's fair for the government to use, for Obama's cabinet to use $400 billion in taxpayer money and bail out the banks with that money that essentially belongs to the people, not the banks?
If that means America won't be in a depression, I think that's completely fair.
But I feel like that money could be used for something else, like to prevent that banks need those bailouts.
That's why I think regulation should be put in place in the banks before the banks can get to the point of a bailout.
But you still want bailouts.
I think that the bailout that happened was a good idea, but I feel like regulation should be put in place, like the Glass-Steagall Act, so the banks are not allowed to get to the point where they have crashed and they need a bailout.
But if it is needed, if bailouts are needed in the future, which is more than likely, don't you think that it's just a cycle that's forming? Like the government keeps paying the banks off and the banks don't have to do anything for it. It's unfair, don't you think?
I think if the banks don't keep on crashing and there's regulation put in place, then there won't be a continuous bailout, and there won't be anything that's unfair.
So their bailouts will be there just in case something
happened? The bailouts will be there in case, but like we already saw that the banks crashed without regulation the first time. So if we have to do something to keep the banks from crashing. And if the banks do crash, they are too big to fail, and then America will be in a depression.
But that's what bailouts are now. They're there just in case. That's what it is already. They're there just in case. So, I mean, we're using bailouts regardless because banks are taking risky loans because they know that the government's just going to pay it off.
Yeah, that's why regulation like the Glass-Steagall Act should be put in place, because the Glass-Steagall Act, for one, separates the deposit and investment banks. It ensures the loans up to $250,000, and it prevents the banks from making risky loans. So there's no way that the banks can get to the point of crashing where they need a bailout, because there's so much regulation that the banks will not crash.
So essentially bailouts are a short-term solution to such a long-term problem.
Yeah.
And you think that we should put in place stuff like the Glass-Steagall Act?
Will keep the banks in order,
right.
So there won't be bailouts.
How do you feel about setting up job training or education programs to inform Americans about the economic, economics in general?
I feel like that would be a great idea, because most of the Americans don't know what they're getting themselves into. Like they're taking these loans that they can't really pay. They know they can't pay, so if they know what they're supposed to be doing, it will work for them.
Even though education will inform the people, it doesn't stop people that want to take out a loan from getting the loan. Like if people want money, they're just gonna take it, and they're not gonna think twice about could I pay this back in the future?
But they're much more likely
the money at the moment in time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But they're much more likely to not take $1 million loan, which is, I don't even know if that's possible. They're much less likely to take out loans if they know what they're getting themselves into. Because right now, even the regulators that are giving out loans don't even really know what they're doing.
They don't know what they're doing, but the thing is, they don't care, because all they care about is making profits for themselves. So all they know is, doing this will give us profits. So we don't know if we're going to cause the banking system to crash in the future, but right now we're rolling in cash, so we don't really care.
That's why we said, as we said before, there's going to be this regulation that would allow the people, well, first to know, to be informed, and then the banks wouldn't give these risky loans to people. So in a sense, there will be less people taking out these risky loans, like those big loans that they can't pay, right?
Right.
Well, I have a quick question. When you say the regulators don't know exactly what they're doing or understand it, do you mean the people at the top, or do you mean the people who are actually looking at people's information and giving them a loan.
Looking at people's information and giving them a loan.
Because most of them are not really looking at the people.
They don't know what they're causing to the
Yeah.
entire system.
Most of them are just giving out loans because it's in their best interest.
They get benefits.
It's in the loan people's best
Yeah.
interest.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they get money out of the people that can't pay it back.
But
so
do they individually get money in their pocket, or does the bank itself get money in its pocket?
I mean, I guess that makes sense. The bank itself gets its money in the pocket, but the bank is
It's pretty
who
much
pays
the
them
same.
the
for their.
regulators. So both, I guess. They will get both.
What about solely taking away regulation instead of like having such, I guess, an enforcement on the banks? What about slowly taking it away?
Well, that was already tried with the Glass-Steagall Act, because the Glass-Steagall Act was slowly taken away, and the thing is, the banks went back to their old ways, and it didn't end up helping them be independent. They went back to only making decisions that made them more profitable.
But you
I
said
thought you said
a
that the
minute ago
Glass-Steagall
that
Act-
It was implemented for, like, regulation was implemented, so it helps the banks not get to the point of crashing, but it was slowly taken away. And so that's what you're suggesting, slowly take away the regulation.
But a minute
and
ago
like it didn't work.
you said that the Steagall Act like
Helped.
something like that should be implemented.
It's
But
something
now-
that should be implemented, but in the past it was taken away.
Oh, so that the Steagall Act was taken away before.
So the Steagall Act didn't work in the past.
No, it worked when it was implemented, and then
It was taken
rules
away.
was the
Oh,
government took it
okay.
away, and that by the end it was not implemented anymore, and that's why the banking system went back to its old ways and started to make bad decisions. So I don't know. I just wanted to touch on a point back with the education. So you were suggesting educational programs that made like the people more informative about what types of loans are taking out. The thing is, with more regulations put in place in the bank, they're not going to be giving any loans to people that they know won't be able to pay them back. So if these regulations aren't kept in place, then there won't be a chance for like the people to take out like any of these risky loans, because the banks will be giving them the safe loans that they know that they'll be able to pay back.
Yeah, I guess there's like a point where there's like a line where you should have just enough regulation, but not too much that the banks feel like hoarded by the government. Yeah.
Banks' decisions have a big effect on the housing market. Government since the 1970s has tried to increase his role in the housing market, and put acts in effect like the Fannie Mae, which allows lenders to reinvest their assets into more lending, and the Freddie Mac that expands secondary market of mortgages in the USA and increases the money available for new home purchases. These two acts help the homeowners pay for their houses, but I feel like this is not enough to help the housing market to get in place.
Well, even early last year, the housing market began stabilizing with government intervention by holding down mortgage rates, offering tax credit for buyers, and giving low down payment loans. Demand for housing is sparked. Relaxed government, market-to-market accounting rules gave banks more flexibility in valuing assets and helping to stop banks from failing.
Well, that's good, but I don't feel like banks are gonna keep the low prices forever and the mortgages rate down. Banks wouldn't get anything out of it, so it would be just a short-term solution.
See, I completely agree that it's a short-term solution, and I even have an even more specific solution, which is the Julius Caesar Act. I kind of coined that name because 2,000 years ago, the Emperor Julius Caesar, in ancient Rome, they were having a housing crisis similar to our own. Everybody was losing jobs, like we are today. They couldn't make their payments on their mortgage. They couldn't make payments for food, similar to today, some people. And what Julius Caesar did was something that nobody had really thought of before. And it was just like when your friend loans you money, instead of paying your friend back in interest, all your friend expects back is what you paid to him initially. So Julius Caesar did that exactly. He did a zero interest loan which if he gives you back 400,000, you're gonna pay him back 400,000 and not a penny more. See, the way he did that is people could actually spend money and have money left over to spend in the economy, which would stimulate the economy, and the banks would actually be paid.
How would the banks make money?
See, like the banks are today, the banks are still making profit, because every time somebody can't make a loan, they can't make a payment and they defer, they get interest. When banks get interest, they get money. So the banks, from all their racked up interest over the years, excuse me, has enough money to spare for a little solution to get this housing market back on its feet.
Well, as you said earlier, that was over 2,000 years ago. How do you even expect that to work?
Because ancient Rome, like the United States, was the most powerful economic center in the world. Rome had the largest cities, had the largest banks, had the largest military. So I don't even know how you could not see the resemblance to the United States today.
Well, as it was then, it lasted long. I mean, it lasted a little while, but as pretty much every power in the world has been, it failed at some point.
See, this is true. And what Gabby was saying earlier about banks being too big to fail, in this situation, a bank will not have to get big. All you do is pay back your bank. When you pay back your bank doesn't lose money. Your bank gets the money back that it was originally offered. When other people would have to defer on loans, the banks don't get paid. So even though the banks are not exactly gaining the profit in which they wished, they're still getting paid by people that actually can afford it now. Which, that brings me back to what I said originally, which was the main part of it is you get to put money back in the economy. An economy with nobody putting money in it is useless. The economy can't thrive like that.
Aren't they getting paid by people that can't afford to pay them because they're deferring on their loan payments, and they're getting paid by the interest?
See, that's true, but those people can now make payments. And when they can make the payment to the bank, the only way a bank gets money with the 0% is if somebody is already underwater in their mortgage. Say they owe they were originally given $400,000 and they're already in $600,000 debt. The bank will get that difference, which I know a ton of people will have to still pay that underwater difference. So the banks will still make profit, just not the record high profits that we've been hearing about.
Well, they will lose these record high profits, and banks today are much bigger and much more influential in government today than they were in 2000, in Rome, over 2,000 years ago,
I completely agree. It's just, now I'm going to ask you a question. Does the good of the people come before the good of the country?
Well, who's to decide that? The people at the top decide that, and if Wall Street is so involved in government, then what makes you think that anything's going to change?
That's the only thing I can say. I'm not the one that can put this in place, but if it is put in place, 25, 30 years, a generation, 15 to 30 years, based on APR mortgages, which is the standard mortgage rates, 15 to 30 years, 25, 30 years, we might be completely the opposite of what we are today.
I mean, the people make the country, so if it's not benefiting the people, then it wouldn't be benefiting the country. So I feel like what the quote Julius Caesar Act would, I mean, I'm not sure if it would work or not, but it should work, because if it's going to help the people, then
it should help the country as a whole.
Alright, peace out.
We got bullshit in the end.
What am I going to say, though?
Whatever
What did you say?
whatever-
Remember, last time we had
that
to
was
do with
that was
that
that was
was
probably a
like-
good 5 or 6 minutes, don't you think?
Yeah.